Miller, right? Oh, that's a good one. 1961, Losing Again. That should be the theme song for Chuck Schumer, don't you think? Lost on tech, lost on judge, lost in 2016, and now loses on the shutdown strategy, which was one of the most cockamamie ideas that I could ever conceive of at a time where the Trump administration is keeping its focus on the American worker and the American people. We have an unreal show on tap for you today. And we have news on the trade front that is sending the globalists just absolutely bonkers. They're going crazy over Trump's trade announcement yesterday. So that's fantastic news. And the reopening of the government is absolutely sending the far left over the edge, because they've been spending all their time trying to convince the American people that Donald Trump is stupid. He's alternatively stupid, mentally deficient, has Alzheimer's, has false teeth that are falling out. What else, James? Is just in over his head, a political neophyte, just a completely out of his depth. And so they've made this their narrative about Trump. He just can't be trusted with his hand on the levers of government, and he's going to blow the world up. And, oh, my gosh, we're going to have a nuclear holocaust because of, they have gone all in on that narrative. Then Trump ends up winning again on this immigration shutdown issue, and they frame the debate really well with the help of a few choice individuals. They framed it really well by saying the Democrats care more about illegal immigrants than they do about the American military. And I will say that is not in the slightest an exaggeration. The Democrats care more about gathering new voters than they do about ensuring that our military was paid in a timely manner. And it wasn't until they really began to see the public outcry and all the polls that, if you watched the Ingraham angle last night, and if you didn't, tisk, tisk. The polls on this from that Harvard-Harris poll that came out yesterday, and I'll go through some of the other questions that I didn't have time to get to last night, they're just devastating for the Democrats. Even people who want to give the DACA people some type of regular status, even those people were overwhelmingly against shutting down the government for them, but somehow the Democrats just didn't get that. So again, I ask you this question. Who's the smartest one now? Who's the person who has a better sense of strategy? So now they've moved to a different tactic. And you heard a little bit about what they're doing in that soundbite that we bumped in with. Well, he's just disengaged. He didn't want to seem to be close to this narrative of the government shutting down. So he's actually not running things at all. So now that's what they've moved to. Let's listen.
I think if we've learned anything during this process, it's that a strategy to shut down the government over the issue of illegal immigration is something the American people didn't understand and would not have understood in the future.
Well, I think, again, that wily old dog, Mitch McConnell, he actually slipped in about, I think Raymond mentioned last night, it was $300 billion worth of tax breaks into the reopening of the government, the authorization to continue temporary funding of the government. And the taxes that were at least temporarily repealed, and I hope permanently repealed, it's a little hard to get your handle on this, a medical device tax, the health care tax, and then one other Obamacare tax. Oh, the Cadillac plan tax. So as Schumer and the Democrats are melting down, the phone lines, everything, people are outraged by the shutdown. So they're melting down, and that wily dog, the old dog, Mitch McConnell, manages to slip in that tax relief into the reopening of the government. I love that. I didn't even know that till last night, I confess. So all of that was really, really smart. And I want to remind everyone what the Democrats were trying to do last Wednesday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Remember, it was a week ago that you had that supposedly bipartisan gaggle show up at the cabinet meeting room, the conference room, and they, Trump was saying, "Well, we'll come to agreement. Bring me something, and I'll take the heat." Remember all that, and so they did that, and the Democrats really thought, "Oh, we have him now. We've got him now. We're just going to bring him a piece of legislation that actually increases chain migration." You know what I was thinking about? The more I thought about this last night, of course, I couldn't fall asleep till 2 a.m. That was fun. So this is what I thought about last night. I think Trump may have purposely at that meeting said, "Oh, bring me, I'll sign it. Bring me something." It could have been one of the greatest setups of all time. James, you see what I'm saying here? So then Lindsey Graham and Durbin and Flake get together, and they're like, "Did you hear what he said in there? We're going to bring him our dream bill about the dream. Our dream bill is increasing legal immigration, chain migration, keeping the visa lottery system, but just transferring it to another program. Not really funding the border. We'll just put it like a little paltry down payment." This guy's going to agree to anything. And so then they come over with that. You got Cotton and you got Perdue in the room with Stephen Miller, and they look at these Democrats. You're like, "Are you kidding me? I don't agree to that." Then it forces their hand to shut the government down. I almost think that this was all planned out methodically, because it couldn't have worked out better for the Republicans. I can tell you that right now. And look, they have to perform well over the next few weeks, and they can. I've said this before, but on the issue of immigration, Republicans can screw up a one-car funeral. So they could still screw things up. But looking back on the last week, you know what this reminds me of? It kind of reminds me of that Peanuts scene from what's the Thanksgiving Charlie Brown special?
This time I'm gonna kick that football clear to the moon! Isn't it peculiar, Charlie Brown, how some traditions just slowly fade away?
Well, I think Trump would be Lucy in this scenario, but a nicer Lucy. You're listening to the Laura Ingraham Show, 855-40-LAURA. We're going to get all over this disappearing text messages. This stinks to high heaven. Of course, the only text messages at the Justice Department that were not preserved were the text messages between that disgraced FBI Trump-hating agent Peter Strzok, who worked on both the Clinton email investigation and the Mueller Russia investigation. The one between him and the ones between him and his lovely Lisa Page, and the key time period of December through December 2016, when Trump transition was getting going, into the day that Jim Comey was appointed special counsel. Robert Mueller was appointed special counsel. Isn't that curious that only the text messages between those two disappeared? You're listening to the Laura Ingraham Show, 855-40-LAURA. So we got the big Trump win on taxes. We have a huge win on trade. I'll get into that. We have this disappearing text messages, which go right to the heart of the legitimacy, I believe, of this entire kickoff of this investigation. We will learn more when this 4-page synopsis of the House Intel Committee memo comes out about the FISA warrants and what took place. This is just a swirling mess for the Democrats. It seems like in the Obama administration, they just really seem to have trouble keeping the records, right? The records from Benghazi. I think they lost some of the video the night of Benghazi, the video security cam footage of when Ambassador Stevens was actually pulled out of that building. That suddenly disappeared. They lost the Lois Lerner emails, the former head of the IRS, after the mistreatment of conservative groups applying for 501c3 status. Hillary misplaced all of those emails, thousands and thousands of emails. BleachBit. They're taking hammers to Blackberries, and now this. I find this actually to be really scary, because the FBI is supposed to be an organization that we look up to and trust from the lowest level to the highest level in the FBI. These are supposed to be professionals who call balls and strikes. But what we've discovered it is that it has been inhabited by partisan hacks who are seeking to either prevent Donald Trump from becoming president at all. Of course, that's the insurance policy reference by Peter Strzok, or seeking to subvert his presidency by assisting in the start of an investigation that should have never been in any way undertaken, and that's the Russia investigation. Now, that's what you expect from the old Soviet Union, the old USSR days, or maybe in China, where they're spying on their political enemies, or maybe in Fidel Castro's Cuba, in North Korea. You do not expect this in the United States of America. So when Donald Trump, so many months ago, talked about how he was spied on, everyone laughed at him. Remember, he was wiretapped. Well, maybe he wasn't, quote, wiretapped. But boy, was he onto something, that the intel agencies, and again, I'm talking about the leadership, not the rank and file who are good people, but the leadership, the top investigators, that some of these people were corrupt to the core. Now the corruption goes so deep that they were actually destroying evidence in anticipation of a future investigation or an ongoing investigation. And what does that equal, my friends? That equals obstruction of justice. 855-40-LAURA, a huge win on the reopening of the government for Donald Trump, the man they were trying to describe as ill-informed and ill-equipped to be president. And now, from the outside at least, it looks like an obstruction of justice taking place at the highest levels of the U.S. government, all because they're so afraid of big bad Donald Trump being president of the United States. I can't wait till we really find out what happened. We'll stay with it together. And Joe DeGenova is going to stop by. Bob Costa is going to join us. And Sean Duffy's going to stop by. We have a great show on tap. Incredible show tonight on the Ingraham Angle. Make sure you follow us on Twitter and Facebook. We'll take it on together, and we're going to keep bringing you stories that no one else is bringing you on issues that, for some reason, the lamestream media chooses to turn a blind eye on, but not us. We'll stay on it for you. We want to hear your calls. 855-40.
Are we actually to believe that the only texts that were not preserved were those between Strzok and his gal pal Page?
I don't accept the explanation we've been given. I think we need to dig harder. I think Wray's going to have to testify under oath.
Christopher Wray,
the FBI director, in front of the Congress. And think about all the critical events that were going on during this time. You have the Trump transition. You have the Trump inauguration. FBI agents running over to interrogate Michael Flynn for whatever reason. Then you have the Comey when he says, oh, we're doing this big Russia investigation. The firing of Comey. All these things were happening. And you can imagine, based on what we already know with Strzok and Page, they were saying all kinds of things about this, and I think it probably would be really devastating evidence of their bias against Donald Trump.
That was Congressman Ron DeSantis on the Ingraham Angle last night, 855-40-LAURA. The underestimating of Donald Trump. This has been happening, oh gosh, since 2015 when he came down that escalator. And they were stunned when he won. They were kicked back on their heels. And then they decided, gosh, we got to take him out. Well, the insurance policy that Peter Strzok wrote about in one of his text messages to his paramour, well, guess what happened with that? That didn't work. The insurance policy didn't work. So now, well, they had to go into Plan B after he was elected. Hey, we got to get this. We got to get a special. We got to get on him. What are we going to? Can you imagine what's in those text messages? By the way, there are 50,000 text messages that were not deleted, and that averages 68 text messages a day between him and Lisa Page. How do you work at all with 68 text messages just to one person? I mean, that's so girly of Peter Strzok to be writing that many text messages. 68 text messages a day. And tell me they're all sweet nothings. I don't think so. I think it's like, okay, I'll get him this way, honey, and then you get him that way, and then we're going to show him, and then we're going to do this, and then we're going to say Russia, Russia, Russia. Oh, so annoying. Let's go to Maria, Ohio, on the Laura Ingraham Show. Make sure to tune in tonight to the Ingram Angle. Phenomenal show. We're going to be on all aspects of this. I already found out my producer's sick. So it's all right. I'll have to produce, host. No big deal. Maria, go ahead. Get better, Tommy, if you're listening.
Laura, how are you? Hi.
I'm great. Thanks.
Good. This is in regard to the Peter Strzok emails. In light of the fact that we now know there is embedded within the FBI and Justice Department a secret society whose apparent goal is to bring down our republic, Jeff Sessions should use the NSA collection program to find all of the bad actors, which is the intended use of this program. And if Sessions can't do this...
I appreciate it. We haven't gotten into the secret society, but we will. And Maria's talking about the meeting that took place. We don't have time to hit it right now, but we will when we come back with Joe DeGeneva. He is hot on this story, I can tell you that right now. And a lot more to get to on the Laura Ingraham Show. Watch tonight, 855-40-LAURA. That's Trey Gowdy. His analysis of this craziness. They're having a meeting of the secret society of FBI agents. This sounds like something out of a bad Dan Brown novel or something. This is crazy. Joining us now, Joe DeGeneva, of course, former U.S. Attorney, District of Columbia, a lawyer extraordinaire. He joins us now. Joe, just when you think they couldn't go lower, they go lower. And if this is really what I think it is, with both the secret society and the destruction of emails, then we could be looking at jail time for individuals, could we not?
Yes, I think there's something also that's very important here that we have to look at. This is about the structure of the FBI and its leadership. Christopher Wray was made the FBI director by President Trump on the recommendation of a group of former Bush administration people.
Nightmare.
Christopher Wray, we are told in a report today, has threatened to resign if Sessions kept putting pressure on him to fire McCabe. I would have accepted Mr. Wray's resignation immediately because it is quite apparent that Christopher Wray is not up to the job of being FBI director, that he is undermining its credibility, not strengthening it, and that he is completely controlled by the upper bureaucracy at the FBI. I think the Trump people at the White House made a terrible mistake. They're well known to have a horrible personnel department. The fact that Chris Wray ended up being FBI director is a compliment to their incompetence at the White House. But whatever they want to say about it now, they made a big mistake, and there's nothing they can do about him, except the next time he offers his resignation, take it.
Well, that leads me to the concern that many people have raised about Sessions. Like, if he doesn't remove somebody, why not? If Christopher Wray will not remove Andrew McCabe, who by all accounts is just a complete nightmare disaster, then what's the point of having an attorney general at all?
I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more. I find this situation completely untenable for a president of the United States to have people in the Justice Department that he cannot communicate with, that they will not listen, and they are afraid to act. You layer on top of Christopher Wray, and I like Jeff Sessions. He's a wonderful guy.
He's great on immigration and all this. So many issues he's been fantastic on. I adore him, but he should have been DHS secretary maybe.
I think the other real problem is Rod Rosenstein. And I don't think there is any doubt whatsoever that Rosenstein is too close to Comey, too close to Mueller, too close to Wray, and too close to a whole bunch of people. And I think that when all is said and done, Rod Rosenstein has made a series of incredibly bad errors which have harmed the President of the United States. The appointment of the special counsel was a mistake. He passed the buck. He didn't want to deal with the hot potato. He didn't want the investigation inside the Justice Department. He picks Mueller, who was a close friend of his and a close friend of Comey's. Nothing but bad judgment from Rod Rosenstein from day one. He has become an albatross around the neck of the president. And I got to tell you something. I don't know how this ends. I really do not know how this ends, because the upcoming game is whether or not the president agrees to be interviewed by Mueller. That's where we're headed next. That's the next big fight.
We're talking to Joe DeGeneva here on the Laura Ingraham Show. Joe, let's move on to the other disturbing development, the understanding that there were thousands and thousands of emails, text messages between Lisa Page, FBI lawyer and chief investigator of the FBI for both the Mueller and the and the Clinton email investigation, Peter Strzok, have gone missing, with the claim that they weren't preserved because of some software glitch and updating, and it was only their messages that are missing at the FBI, apparently. What can be done about this at this point?
First of all of these text messages and all of Hillary Clinton's mission emails are in the possession of NSA. So let's get that out of the way right away. This stuff exists, and it exists at the NSA. Next, this is ridiculous. It is unbelievable. It is not believable. It should not be believed. The FBI is neurotic, nothing if not neurotic, about record keeping. To suggest that their people had a glitch in software for the retention of text messages over a 5-month period, which period just happens to be the single most vital period in the brazen plot to exonerate Hillary Clinton and frame the incoming president of the United States with a false crime. Let me just tell you something. At a certain point, the president of the United States is going to say, I've had enough. And either I get some people around me who have some balls, or I'm going to just make my decisions and start making phone calls. Which do you want? Do you want me to start calling the director of the FBI and saying, you're fired, to Jeff Sessions or Rod Rosenstein? Or am I going to get some people around me who know what the hell they're doing?
I think, Joe, one of the biggest mistakes in retrospect of the Trump administration is sadly, and it pains me to say this, is putting Jeff Sessions in as Attorney General. And I say this because, he melted. The first sign of pressure, he melted. Oh, I'm going to recuse myself. Then it was picking that Rod Rosenstein. I've been saying this since last February, okay? Or whatever it was, March. Rosenstein is a old Bush guy, and he wasn't loyal to Trump. Trump deserves people at Justice who are loyal to him. Of course they're loyal to the rule of law, but they're also loyal to what he's trying to accomplish. And Rosenstein's loyalty runs to Mueller, it runs to Comey, it runs to the system, whatever the system wants to decide it is. And now we're stuck with a situation where Trump is damned if he does and he's damned if he doesn't. If he moves to fire these people, it's a political firestorm. If he doesn't, they're going to continue to try to undo his presidency, which so far is really successful.
Let me tell you something. Rod Rosenstein is in this for one thing, himself. He is a self-promoting. He's one of these. He's one of these martinets who pretends to objectivity and carries himself with an almost Comey-like aloofness. Deeply offended by things around him which he doesn't like. That he's almost prissy. Let's just say this about Rosenstein. He is prissy, and the problem with a guy like that is he looks out for one person, himself. Well, I've got news for him. His job is to look out for the president of the United States within the bounds of the law. There's nothing wrong with that. That's not a suggestion of impropriety. And Jeff Sessions seems to have decided that if he can have a little bit of fun within the goal, within the boundaries of the playing field and not get anybody mad at him, that's going to be enough to get the job done. Let me tell you something. These two guys are in their jobs at a very important time in history, and they're not up to it.
No, I've got to say it pains me to say this about Sessions because I adore him. I mean, I have been one of his biggest supporters and boosters, but sometimes the job doesn't fit the person.
Right.
And it just doesn't. It does. There's so many things he could do, and I mean, obviously, if he had stayed a senator of Alabama, we wouldn't have Doug Jones. I mean, there's a whole series of things that coulda, shoulda, woulda. It's no point in saying it now, but I just think that when you have an American media who refuse to cover the serious, at least the beginnings of what I believe are serious crimes being committed inside our intelligence agencies and the FBI, and they're just basically laughing it off, Joe, as, oh, this is all in the conspiracy theorist minds of Fox News and talk radio. They just keep dismissing it. And ditto for Comey, who's sending out MLK Jr. quotes today. Did you see that? It's like, and I tweeted back, sanctimonious prig.
You know what he is? He's fascinating. He keeps comparing himself to Thomas Becket. And I said, and I continue to say, he's not Thomas Becket. He's the assassin, Henry II, who killed Thomas Becket. I mean, Comey is a thug. He's a lying thug. He's a dirty cop. And the problem with Chris Wray and Jeff Sessions and Rod Rosenstein is none of them has gravitas. They have no gravitas. When you stand up in front of a microphone and you're the Attorney General or the Deputy Attorney General or the FBI Director, you know what should happen? People on the other side of the microphone would say, "Holy smokes, this guy's this person is serious." They look at these three people, and they can't figure out whether or not they have their big boy pants on any given day.
We're talking to Joe DeGenova here on the Laura Ingraham Show on CNN yesterday, or MSNBC. They all blend into to be the same network for me. But one of the Democrats on the panel he was talking about how the Republicans are seizing on this to try to delegitimize an entire agency that is filled with hardworking men and women. And even if Peter Strzok was injudicious in having this ongoing relationship inside, that doesn't taint the hard work of the men and women who are putting together all the investigatory elements for this whole Comey Mueller deal.
Well, it's nonsense. It's just utter nonsense, of course. This is what the Democrats do. They will do anything to prevent the legitimate administration of justice, and they're engaged in it right now because it's going to hurt them and hurt Hillary Clinton and hurt their future prospects for the presidency, because the one thing that they fear most is a strong Trump, and he's getting stronger every day.
Joe DeGenova here on the Laura Ingraham Show. Joe, thanks so much. Come on TV soon. We're going to take a break on the Laura Ingraham Show. These are tough words from Joe and myself, and again, both of us really like Jeff Sessions so much. But this is causing a problem for this administration that is winning on every level. The only place where they've been tripped up is this nonsense special counsel, Robert Mueller. This is the only problem for this administration. And why was it caused? This whole thing was kicked off by a bad decision to try to recuse himself from an investigation he didn't have to recuse himself from. And when we come back, goodbye to a radio giant who's hanging up the headphones. Don't go away. No, we're having computer issues. Yeah, so the FBI had computer issues. That's why they lost all those text messages. I don't think we can use that as an excuse anymore because we're not believing what the struck page disappearing texts are all about. They had computer issues. I'm telling you, it stinks to high heaven. So I read this yesterday, and it made me sad and wistful and all those things. Don Imus is retiring from radio at age 77. 21 years ago, or 21 and a half years ago, he gave me my start in radio. Don Imus invited me on in 1996 on his show, and, excuse me, this was during the 96 Republican Convention. I'm really dating myself. It was taking place in San Diego, and I was there with MSNBC, which had just started the month before. So MSNBC started July 15th, 1996. And they smartly decided to simulcast Imus's radio show from 6 to 9 a.m. every day. So they took the cameras down to the Astoria studios in New York. It was in this bowels of this basement. But they had cameras. They set it up. It actually looked really great. And this is just That was awesome. So he invites me on, and he had seen me doing a debate on MSNBC. He's like, who's this? She's like kind of nuts. I like her. Do you believe all this crap that you say, or are you just saying it for TV, Ingram? And we used to get into huge fights. I mean, real fights. And we had a love-hate relationship. He would ban me for years and then have me back. But without him, I would not be doing what I'm doing. So either you can blame him or you can thank him. But he is one of the great giants in this industry. I don't think anyone did better interviews than Don Imus. I really don't think so. His music knowledge, because he was an old DJ in New York, his understanding of people, his voice, and his breadth of understanding about politics, just the ability to get an answer from people. He's just amazing. I adore him. And I'm very sad to hear that he's going to be leaving radio. But, boy, what a career. What a life. Thanks, Imus. You're listening to the Laura Ingraham Show, 855-40-LAURA. Well, I guess it's terrorizing congressmen and senators when you actually remind them of their constitutional obligation to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States, uphold it, the interests of the American people, not the interests of illegal immigrants who shouldn't have been here in the first place. They decide now to move to target yours truly. That was Casey Hunt. I was working on my Ingram angle monologue yesterday, sitting in my bedroom, and I was typing away, and then I heard my name. I'm like, oh, okay, what is it? Back it up on the DVR. And you never hear Casey Hunt or any of these people who love the Democrats. They rarely talk about what illegal immigration has done to the American worker, low-wage worker, minority worker, American communities that have seen the uptick in crime. We talked about that yesterday, the MS-13 gangs that are now populating Northern Virginia, Maryland, Los Angeles, Chicago, Miami, and beyond. People who've lost their sons or daughters, husbands, wives. A little 6-year-old girl raped in New Jersey in October. FoxNews.com has a news story out, which I retweeted. I'll have to look it up because I'm talking at the same time as I'm trying to find it. But FoxNews.com has a piece about an illegal immigrant who is now guilty, they found, of raping several people. So go to lauraingraham.com. We have that piece featured there and on Twitter. They don't really ever seem to get into those stories. They're not terrorizing. Again, I don't have the piece at my fingertips, but we'll have that in just a moment for you. So rape, murder, maiming, gang activity, human trafficking, drug smuggling, gun smuggling, but Casey Hunt decides to say that, well, Breitbart and Laura Ingraham are terrorizing Congress. God, if they can be terrorized by me, they really are wimps. I mean, that's just pathetic. John in Arizona has been patient. Speaking of the leverage that the administration now has on the immigration debate, John, go ahead.
God bless you, Laura. I'm from Tucson, grew up there, token white boy on my street in Novadio. When I was growing up, the Hispanics would not let their sons or daughters speak Spanish outside of their house. They wanted to become Americans, red, white, and blue all the way. My son's a junior at ASU, is an engineer. There's things set up for the illegals, tables, assistance, subsidies. My son, he just goes day to day and tries to be the best person he can be. The Mexicans now, they get subsidized. They keep on saying, we won't do the work that the Mexicans would do. Well, they get subsidized. They can work for $10 an hour. I'm a general contractor. I deal with them every day. They park the wrong way. They don't speak English. I try to be respectful to them, but they don't want to be Americans. They fly their Mexican flags. I thank you so much for flying the flag for us here in Arizona. It is terrible here. My parents would flip over in their graves to see what has become of this great country. I went to see Mr. Trump. I've talked to him. I got his autograph. I sat with the congressmen and senators. He wants America first. If he votes for DACA, not only why not ever vote for Mr. Trump again, I will stop voting. I just thank you so much. I watch your show at night, and God bless you.
All right, thanks so much. I appreciate it. This, in my view, is a symptom of a larger problem in the U.S. government, where groups like the Chamber of Commerce and La Raza, whatever it's called now, have more influence over the process than all of you when it comes to certain types of legislation. Now, if it were not for talk radio terrorizing Congress or Fox, certain Fox hosts actually publicizing the truth about illegal immigration, then I think many in the American public would be in the dark, left in the dark, because we know the media will not report on these stories. They won't do it. And there was a piece that we got into yesterday on the Ingraham angle about it was a poll that just came out, and it's the Harvard-Harris poll that is stunning, and it demonstrated once again, excuse my voice, that we are in the mainstream on immigration, and Lindsey Graham and Jeff Flake and Dick Durbin and Cory Gardner and all these other Republicans who are forever obsessed with amnesty, they are rabid amnesty radicals. Most Americans do not want this. Now, 65% of voters in this new poll favored a deal in Congress that said, look, we need merit-based immigration over family-based immigration. That, of course, relates to the chain migration. So 65% say merit-based. 58% of voters, including a majority of Hispanic voters, opposed Democrats voting to shut down the government to restore DACA work permits. So even though I think there's some sympathy for the DACA people, they don't want to shut the government down for it. 68% of voters, this is the key part, oppose the visa lottery system. And that includes 62% of Democrats, 61% of Hispanics, and 57% of African American voters, all opposed to that 50,000 visa lottery. The key, though, in this, which I went through yesterday on the Ingraham angle, the key, most Americans, and it's an overwhelming percentage, I don't have it at my fingertips, most Americans want legal immigration numbers to be cut, reduced. Now, that is not highlighted in most pieces. Most Americans, and I think the number is upwards of 81%, want legal immigration numbers in the United States, legal, reduced. What does that tell you about what people think about how the country is changing? You heard John talk about how bad Arizona is today because of illegal immigration. We heard from the gang task force leader yesterday on radio and on television how Northern Virginia, Manassas, Arlington, even parts of Alexandria, out in Gaithersburg, Maryland, Sterling, Virginia, Vienna, Virginia, are now having to deal with gang recruitment in public schools because these illegal immigrants are transported across the United States on commercial airlines. They're deposited in public schools. They are oftentimes illiterate in their own languages. They come here. They have no real tie to the community, and they are prime targets for gang recruitment. These communities are slowly but surely being lost to a swamping of the demographic and a swamping of the sensibility, the uniquely American sensibility. And most Americans do not want that. An overwhelming percentage of Americans do not want that. A majority of voters, including a majority of Hispanic voters, support building some combo physical and electronic barrier across the U.S.-Mexico border. Yeah, the key, again, 81% want a reduction in legal immigration. 81%. I'm telling you, This is a winner. Donald Trump has all the leverage on this issue. Do not give in to a coalition of open borders fanatics who have nothing on their minds except transforming the United States through cheap labor or, as I said on the Angle last night, repealing and replacing American voters with new voters.
What they want is tools to be able to deport families. They want additional tools, and that's what happens. Remember, the Border Patrol agents just aren't on the border. They're 100 miles in their jurisdiction. They're going to go into Tucson. They're going to go into El Paso. They're going to go into San Diego, and they're going to create a deportation machinery there.
Deportation machinery. I kept saying, if only. If only we're actually deporting people who are illegally here. So, again, that's Luis Gutierrez, who is among the most fanatical of all. Luis Gutierrez really needs to move down to somewhere else. I mean, move down to southern Mexico, where we find out today on Fox News that the dismembered remains of a woman who vanished from a town in southern Mexico were discovered inside pots atop a stove in her ex-husband's home. Magdalena Aguilar Romero, 25, was last seen leaving her home in the city of Toxo the morning of January 13th. Roberto Alvarez, state security spokesman, said the woman's remains were found Monday in the home of her ex-husband, the local media identified as Cesar Gomez Arciniega. It's presumed that the woman was cooked. They found arms, legs, and her pelvis in a big pot. Now, that doesn't, of course, cast aspersions on the whole country, but we know what's happening in the country. You can't even get people to be police officers in Mexico because they end up dead. Work needs to be done to protect and rebuild the social fabric of our municipality, the statement concluded. So why doesn't Gutierrez, if it's so great in other countries, go spend time there, and why don't you relocate there? Why don't you relocate there? I think that's fine. I have no problem. Let's go to Suzanne in California, where it's ground zero for illegal immigration. Suzanne.
Yes, welcome to the socialist state of California. I worked in the Anaheim School District many years ago, and the children get free dental, free eye care, free shots, free food, free everything, while we work 2 jobs to put our kids through school. And then when it comes to college, they get free this, free that. It's just turned into be a nightmare here in California. And I've taught them children, and it's not the case of not loving a child. It's a case of what the government has done, and the state of California is pathetic.
Oh, my God, it's a disaster. I mean, I did a whole thing about the California nightmare last week when I was in Los Angeles. The first time I went to California, Suzanne, I think it was 1984, and I thought I had died and gone to heaven when I first went to California, traveled there as in college. I was doing some fundraising for the Dartmouth Review, my newspaper that I edited. And I just remember landing there, and I went all over California. I was in, of course, San Diego, up in Orange County, Oceanside, up to California, up the coast a bit, went inland to the downtown area, went to Claremont. I spent a summer in Claremont McKenna College area, and they had their smog and everything, but I thought I died and gone to heaven. And California still has so much beautiful, it's beautiful. It's a natural beauty, and it's gorgeous in so many ways. But the government has gone completely off the rails in the hands of, again, fanatics. These are socialist fanatics running the government of California. There's nothing they won't tax. There is no movement they won't regulate. If they could regulate bowel movements, they would, for goodness sakes. I mean, this is how bad it is in California. I don't know how anyone does business in that state. Honestly, I don't know how you do it. That's why so many people are leaving California to go to low-tax vicinities. And they'll go to Las Vegas, they'll go to Florida, they'll go to Texas, they'll go to Utah, even some moving to Wyoming. But the middle class in California is just in a vice grip. And meanwhile, you're absolutely right, Suzanne. The indigent immigrants, most of them illegal, get breakfast, lunch, and dinner in the public schools. And that's what they want for the rest of America. 855-40-LAURA. Run against Tim Kaine in Virginia. That would have been a fun series of debates on the road in Virginia. Oh, that would have been fun. Well, I guess technically he's right. I mean, President Trump rescinded the executive order, but delayed its rescinding until March. So he gave them 6 months to figure it out. But yeah, I guess technically Tim Kaine is right. We've got to be fair. But what they want to apply that to everything. They want to use phrases like undocumented citizens. And Taylor just reminded me that VDH, Victor Davis Hanson, always says to say undocumented means that they had documents in the first place. They don't have documents. They're illegally present in the United States. Under U.S. law, they're called aliens, illegal aliens. They're not illegal citizens. They're not undocumented Americans. They are illegal aliens under the U.S. Code. Now, you want to rewrite the whole code of the United States of America that applies to immigration? Go ahead. Bob Costa is going to join us in a few moments. He hosts a show on PBS, and you see him on NBC. He's a political analyst there. Let's go to Jerry in Illinois. Jerry, go ahead.
Hey, Laura. Nice to talk to you. Now, Dick Durbin is my senator. Dick Durbin should resign. He doesn't understand how to negotiate. He doesn't understand how to put together a deal. He doesn't know how to speak when he comes out of a closed-door meeting. He is an embarrassment to me, to the people of Illinois, and the man really needs to resign.
He's not going to resign. It's not going to resign, Jerry. The Republicans have to get their act together, run someone against him who can actually beat him. The man's been around. Disturbin' Durbin is what I call him. Disturbin' Durbin has been around for, decades? It's a disaster, complete disaster. I appreciate the sentiment, though. Robert in Nebraska, line 6. Robert. Laura, we just lost him. Robert was talking about a crime committed in his hometown that the media refused to cover. Robert, we want you to call back because I want to know what that crime is. Do you like the fact that on the Ingraham Angle I discuss the truth about illegal immigration, meaning not just featuring the stories of the do-gooder illegal immigrants volunteering at their local old folks' home, but also stories about what illegal immigration does to state and local budgets, what it does to public schools, what it has done regarding gang activity and violent crime. As a Uber driver is now charged with multiple rapes, and he is an illegal immigrant, this out of California. We'll make sure that's posted on lauraingraham.com and a lot more coming up. And you look back at things, I wish I could have done this or that or done this differently. And you look back at photos, look at how young I looked. I looked great then. Well, look, there's no time like the present. And you have an opportunity to do a lot to change your life. And you can do a lot just to change your skincare. And that means if you need a little help around the eyes, I can tell you this. Genucel Eyelid. Michelle from Modesto, California says she loves the Genucel eyelid treatment. Did a great job of diminishing those fine lines on your eyelids and firming up the droopy skin there. Bravo Chamonix, she said, for this innovative and much-needed product. Good stuff. And for a limited time, the brand-new Genucel Eye Lift is yours absolutely free when you order Genucel for bags and puffiness under the... And for fast results, the Genucel Immediate Effects is also free with your order. So go to Genucel.com. Do it now for extra savings coupons, or call them at 800-480-5206. And for the first time ever, it's also offering a 3-day free shipping and free returns on Genucel.com. Again, Genucel.com. That's Genucel.com. Or call them now, 800-480-5206. Or relentless open borders Republican owned by the Chamber of Commerce. You're either owned by Big Agra or owned by the Chamber, or a combination if you're a Republican. But these people are total fanatic for amnesty. I mean, they couldn't pass an Obamacare repeal and replace, even though they voted on, 12 times when the votes didn't matter. But the Republicans could not get that done. The entire year it took Trump on the tax reform to get rid of the Obamacare mandate. They could not do that. But by golly, they're going to be committed to the illegal immigrants. We're going to get something done here. And they're telling people that we're the fanatics? I don't think so. That Harvard-Harris poll, which has gotten zero coverage in the mainstream media, 81% of the Americans surveyed want legal immigration levels to be reduced. They put border enforcement ahead of everything else. They put border enforcement ahead of DACA concerns. They did not want the government shut down for DACA. Even Hispanic immigrants, a majority said, no. Can't shut the government down for DACA. That's not what we want to do. And a majority, including Hispanics, for merit-based immigration, not family-based immigration. Now, these are very inconvenient numbers, and they're mirrored in that Gallup poll that came out some years ago that was, again, very detailed in its description. When you ask general questions like, do you want to deport 1.7 million Dreamers immediately and put them on buses? Well, who's going to answer yes to that? Who's going to answer yes to that? No one's going to answer yes to that. But if you say, okay, well, when we have Americans who are living in the streets, including veterans, who should get help first? The American veterans living in the streets or people living in the country illegally? Then it's like 85%. So it depends on how you ask the question. Let's go to Robert Costa, joining us now from PBS and Washington Post, NBC, anything else. Bob, how are you? Good to talk to you.
Great to be with you, Laura.
So, Bob, now the Democrats got caught back on their heels. They tried to shut down the government thinking Trump would be blamed. They've said Trump is stupid. He has dementia. He's mentally not all there. He doesn't know the process. He's a political neophyte. Gosh, if Trump is all those things, it's amazing that he keeps outfoxing all these people. To me, it's stunning.
Well, we're going to have to see how this plays out. I'm not ready to write off the Republicans or the Democrats on DACA because a lot's going to depend on what is actually in an immigration deal. Is it just a pure DACA fix, which both party leaders in Congress and the Senate seem to want, or is it going to be something broader on immigration that addresses various issues? I think that's what reporters and observers are going to have to really pay attention closely to in the coming weeks.
Well, my source, I talked to him yesterday, late last night, actually, not late last night. I talked to him about 7 o'clock last night. For me, that's late because it's all a blur. And he said to me, I will tell you this, Laura. They try to offer up anything in the House that is approaching the Flake, Graham, Durbin nightmare, and that is not even going to be brought up for a vote in the House of Representatives. Period. Not going to be brought up for a vote. So I think, Bob, that we're back where we were in 2007 and 2013, where you have this coalition of amnesty Republicans and amnesty Democrats for different reasons, thinking they can do the bums rush on Trump. And Trump's like, well, I'm not going to do that. No, actually not going to do that. And then they what? You're anti-immigrant. You're a xenophobe. And Fox News and Breitbart and Laura Ingraham and all these people, they're just trying to subvert the whole system. And then you see Hispanic Americans saying, no, we can't put the DACA ahead of funding the government. We no. We want merit-based immigration. And I find it necessary that members of the media, and I'm not trying to lecture you, really, when you dig into these numbers, dig into the real numbers. Don't dig into just general questions. Do you want all Dreamers deported? Do you think a wall for $30 billion shouldn't be done when we have, a lot of this is very misleading. I think the way that traditional media is reporting on this, and they missed the boat when it came to this shutdown. I think a lot of people missed what was happening beneath the headlines.
Well, I would just turn your attention, perhaps, not modestly, I guess, to the front page of today's Post, because in my story, I detail how red state Democrats, Laura, were reading polling that showed that the shutdown, if it was seen as a shutdown tied to immigration, was a politically perilous position for many Democrats to be in. And Senator McCaskill of Missouri, Senator Donnelly of Indiana, others who faced tough re-election fights this year really backed away from the tactic because they saw a political cost for them in more moderate states. And on the immigration question in the House, I think you're right. But some Senate Democrats privately tell me they're okay with that. They'd rather just pass something on immigration out of the Senate and then really run against the House Republicans for not taking up that Senate bill, whatever it is, and using that as a cudgel in their war to win back the House.
Well, good luck with that. I mean, I think I'll take that argument any day of the week. I mean, they thought that was going to work in Virginia with Eric Cantor. They thought that was going to work with John Boehner, who was for amnesty. He's gone. I mean, they keep trying to sell unpopular policies on trade and on immigration and expanding government programs. And for the most part, the Democrats aren't really getting any traction. And my argument would be the reason the Democrats are so desperate for this DACA is not for the DACA kids. If they wanted the DACA kids to get the regular status, they would have agreed to what Trump was going to do. This would have been settled last week. But what they want is an issue. You're right. And what they also want are new voters. Desperately want new voters. And they do not want to limit chain migration. Keep your eye on the prize here. That's the big difference here, which is how many people are going to be allowed to come in with each DACA person who's regularized or legalized, whatever you call it. And if it's 6 people per DACA kid, that's a lot. And under the Durbin-Flake-Graham proposal, the amnesty would have actually reached millions of Americans. It wouldn't have just reached the 800,000. It would have reached their parents who could stay on 3-year rotating visas. And then each of the 800,000 would be able to sponsor relatives, and usually the average for most is anywhere between 4 and 7, especially from Mexico. It's a higher number from Mexico. So that's the prize here, is changing the electoral map, in my view.
Because they're all paying attention to you, Laura, the Capitol Hill Republicans, and they're telling me, look, we know people on the right would be somewhat okay, but uncomfortable, but somewhat okay with a pure DACA fix, just addressing the thousands who are covered under the Obama-era program. But they wonder if the right, speaking of you and other leaders on the right, would give them any leverage on some family members, maybe a limited number, but some family members to be included as part of a deal. They really are wondering that right now in Capitol Hill.
Right, well, here's the answer, no. Here's the answer, no, there's no leverage. The only if you're one of the DACA people, you're already here illegally. The idea that your parents can stay forever, and then you can bring in the aunt, the uncle, and everyone twice removed. I just don't see how that's in any way what Trump should do. I think if you ask average Americans, not just minor children, can your minor children stay? Of course, your minor children, your spouse can always come in under our current immigration policy. Nobody's focusing on what's beyond that. Aunts, uncles, cousins. That's what has changed the map in the United States. It's not the spouses and the minor children. It's adult children, their wives, the wives' brother-in-law. Then it keeps going. So it's an entire family tree being imported into the United States. When you explain it to people, and you don't listen to Luis Gutierrez, who mischaracterizes what chain migration is, then I think people really have a better understanding of it. But I can tell you this, my listeners, and they're from across the country, they think the American people should be put first. And as long as we have veterans living in the streets, they don't think we should be catering to an illegal immigrant population unless you get rid of chain migration, the diversity visa, which is overwhelmingly unpopular according to that Harvard poll, and do the wall. So diversity visa, chain migration, do the wall, and then some 12-year legalization process for illegal immigrants who are allowed to stay. That's about it. I don't see that there's any appetite for anything beyond that. But, I think you're right. They're trying to figure it out. Bob, what about these text messages disappearing? Just apparently the ones between Strzok and Lisa Page, his paramour.
Look, what I'm covering right now as a reporter is a real move among some critics of the Justice Department, critics of the FBI, to raise serious questions in Congress, outside of Congress, about the FBI. And we really haven't seen this kind of offensive from the Republican Party throughout the Trump presidency. There have, of course, been concerns about these kind of text messages and the Mueller investigation. But it's a serious challenge for the Mueller investigation as they really try to keep their number one asset, which is their credibility.
Bob, are you out in the wind? Where are you, sweetie?
I'm sorry. I'm at the White House. So.
Oh, you're outside at the White House. So next time you need to give us some color commentary. Well, there goes Kellyanne Conway. She's walking by. And now there goes. We need you to actually do the play-by-play at the White House for us, so we understand you're not just in a wind tunnel. And
that's a radio show waiting to happen. That could get real listenership.
No, that would be fun. No, that would be a blast. How are you liking PBS? How are you liking your new show?
Oh, I'm really enjoying it. Thanks, Laura. I mean, it's a thrill to host a show on Friday nights and just have some reporters around the table. It's very low-key and focused on kind of just the way reporting's done and no newsmakers. It's a little different kind of show, Washington Week on PBS.
And what time is it on?
8 o'clock on Friday nights.
Is it live?
It always airs live.
Isn't live? Live is the best. I mean, I know you probably
I
want
love
to go out
live.
and
You have more of an edge when you do it live.
No, I don't like. I'm not a big fan of taping. Sometimes you have to, but live is better. So, what's your idea of a Republican leaning analyst on your show? Is it just journalists? Is it just actual reporters?
It's just mainstream journalists. I try to get people who seriously cover the right, seriously cover the left. If you watch Washington Week, I really aim to be balanced, objective, to not lean into any kind of conventional wisdom, and to just keep it based on reporting. I think it's my job. We all have different jobs in the media, but my job is to try to present an unbiased, deeply reported view of the week's events. It's an imperfect effort, but I do try.
Well, I think you're doing a great job, and you're one of the few who actually does call balls and strikes on this stuff. But, Casey Hunt yesterday said I was terrorizing, that I'm one of the people who terrorizes the House of Representatives and the Senate every time an immigration debate comes along. Can you imagine? I'm just a fluffy little nice person, and they say I'm terrorizing.
I don't think you are that. I think you're a nice person as a person, but politically, I'd agree with Casey Hunt a little bit.